Minor spoilers ahead. Elysium, or Class War in Space, is written and directed by District 9 writer-director Neil Blomkamp, and starring Matt Damon as the hero, Jodie Foster as the Heavy, and Charlton Copley from District 9 as the evil Merc Kruger. Elysium takes place in the year 2154, where two classes of people exist. The very wealthy, who live on a pristine man-made space station called Elysium, and the rest, who live on an overpopulated, ruined Earth. The people of Earth are desperate to escape the planet's crime and poverty, and they critically need the state-of-the-art medical care available on Elysium. But some in Elysium will stop at nothing to enforce anti-immigration laws and preserve their citizens' luxurious lifestyle. The only man with the chance to bring equality to these worlds is Max, played by Matt Damon, an ordinary guy in desperate need to get to Elysium. With his life hanging in the balance, Max reluctantly takes on a dangerous mission, one that pits him against Elysium's security secretary, Delacourt, played by Jodie Foster, and her hardline forces. But if he succeeds, he could save not only his own life, but millions of people on Earth as well. Now, Elysium explores political and sociological themes such as immigration, healthcare, and class issues. So, of course, conservatives hate the movie and are attacking it. In their false political spectrum of conservative Republicans to liberal Democrats, the class focus comes off as liberal propaganda to them. People on Earth pay a hefty price in money and their lives to be smuggled on shuttles to Elysium, drawing direct parallels to what people go through to get into our country. The movie isn't heavy-handed or preachy, yet class is just there and examined on the surface, but it is so inherently radical. So on the one hand, to say this movie is trying to say something beyond what it does is kind of pushing it, but for the director to claim there is nothing political about the movie is a half-truth to cover his ass for getting Hollywood to pay $115 million to say fuck the 1%. When asked whether the film reveals how he sees Earth turning out in 140 years, director Blomkamp responded, quote, No, this isn't science fiction. This is today. This is now. And I think that's what makes this great science fiction. It is dealing with present-day issues in a sci-fi setting. Now, this movie is political, whether Blomkamp wants it to be or not, because he portrayed society as it is. Had this movie about a sick, blue-collar ex-con illegally crossing the border to steal health care been set in the present, it would have never gotten the green light. The movie is class-conscious, and Damon does start a class war. Now, of course, they only call it a class war when we fight back, but to be more precise, the class war is always going on, and Max started a new front in the resistance. We let the language of the right shape our language, and it's important to always point out that exploitation is class war. In the case of this movie, building the Elysium was also class war, and they started it, and Max opened up a fissure to crack the whole system. There is a radical core to this movie that is probably more radical than the writer-director realizes. Variety said it is one of the more openly socialist political agendas of any Hollywood movie in memory, beating the drum loudly, not just for universal health care, but for open borders, unconditional amnesty, and the abolition of class distinctions as well. As Vice points out, based on the world that the film takes place in, and the solutions implicitly proposed, that makes it so radical. Abolish the security state, offer universal health care, open the borders, rein in income inequality. Now, the acting is serviceable to the plot. It doesn't go very deep. The movie starts out with Matt Damon's character Max being brutalized by police droids, and it turns out his dangerous factory job is building police robots. An industrial accident leaves Max with 5 days to live, and he decides he must break into Elysium to be cured. The Brazilian actor Wagner Moura from the Elite Squad movies I have yet to see, but I hear are very good, was the black marketeer who Matt Damon made a deal with to pull a heist in exchange for a ride to Elysium. For the heist, this man Spider has his men implant Damon with an exosuit that makes him as strong as a robot. The great character actor William Fichtner was the slimy CEO of the corporation that built Elysium and all the robots used as police and security. There was some technical information about this movie that was very interesting that I wanted to mention. It had the level of gory violence up there with the original RoboCop, so it earned its R rating, I think. And the special effects were seamless, and the Stanford Taurus the 1% lived on was breathtaking and straight out of those old 70s NASA paintings of future space colonies. Blomkamp describes the Elysium Taurus as, quote, Bel Air or Beverly Hills in space. The film's earthbound scenes were shot in a dump in the poor Iztapalapa district on the outskirts of Mexico City, while the scenes for Elysium were shot in Vancouver and the wealthy suburbs outside of Mexico City. The futuristic designs were executed by production designer Philip Ivey after long periods of research and studying older science fiction films, and it shows. The lived-in sci-fi aesthetic was brilliant, and it fits in with classics like Blade Runner, Alien, Aliens, and even Outland. I was wondering if visual futurist Sid Mead, who was responsible for a lot of those movies' production design, did the designs, but he actually didn't. Philip Ivey, though, cited Sid Mead as a substantial influence on this film. And if you don't know who Sid Mead is, look him up on Wikipedia and IMDb. And his website is sydmead.com. Now, the reception, of course, we saw how the conservatives really didn't dig this movie, but Elysium received 66% on the tomato meter, and critics are mostly saying it's good, but not as good as District 9. And there's a spoiler-filled review up at the Left Film Review, and Vice has a review titled Science Fiction Tricked Hollywood into Making the Year's Most Radical Film, and they list how the movie dealt with income inequality, universal health care, and unsafe working conditions. In my final thoughts, I give Elysium an A.